Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. This is Dr. Marcia. Today I'm going to review a book that you might be interested in. Now the guys are going to think, it's feminist, but it's not. It's aging. The name of the book is The Fountain of Age. The name of the writer is Betty Friedan. Now Betty Friedan is no longer living, but she wrote this book in 1992 because she saw a trend happening in America and she wanted to know why it was happening. So she enrolled in Harvard herself to get the answers that she needed to write the book about aging. And her book is called The Fountain of Age, not The Fountain of Youth. Some of the points that she makes in this book are very fascinating, and they have to do with why do women live longer, which is a fact, why do they stay healthier, which is also a fact, and why do the poor guys leave us when they're so young? We don't want them to leave, but they leave this earth. And so she went to school and became very forward-looking on the subject. So she wanted to know what keeps the older men helpful and the women helpless when they die. She wants to know what is the fountain of age. Now, an example of the growth pattern is that the public opportunities came after Betty Friedan. She started Women's Lib in the 50s, and the patterns of freedom came in the 60s. It took that long. There were young managers of women who would study and reveal where they worked and what they were doing and how they managed their families, their community, and their lives with all the work they were doing as well. The men didn't know that staying at home was work. So in the 1950s, when she was 39, there was a study by Yankelovich, who was a famous statistician in America, and he found out that the work managers of 1970 had replaced loyalty of work with loyalty of the work ethic, with loyalty to the self and the family man. And so at the Yale Management School, one of the professors said the professionals need to discuss what they are contributing, not get something from it. They have to learn how to be a player. That's what he said. You can learn it from the baseball teams like Leo DeRocher and Casey Stengel. They figured out what they had to do to lead the men to do batting averages that they had done at 20 continued up to their 40 years birthdays. In other words, there was a motivational factor going on there. In baseball, wasn't going on in the rest of the world. And Betty Friedan found that out. She never batted, however. Anyhow, that's just kidding around. The Fountain of Age from Simon & Schuster is where I got most of this work. And the beginnings are the beginnings of the self. Now, she said, I had a feeling, this is Betty Friedan talking, that I was rushing away from something when I was writing this book. But yet I was getting nearer and nearer to myself. So I was rushing away from what the community and the government wanted, and I was getting to myself, to what I wanted. And I looked for the strength. Where is the strength going to come from to do this? It's deteriorating to do 5 things at once. You know that. You lose your train of thought and everything else goes right with it. But the men did not show the deterioration which the women showed in that respect. But the men weren't healthy enough. Could it have been that the women were so busy getting themselves out in the real world that they weren't taking care of the men and the men died? I don't know. Could have been that. Nobody said it, and they'll probably boot me out of the women's clubs for saying it, but something like that could have happened. Anyway, she went to Harvard, and at a seminar she realized that the topic of aging was creating a need to distance everybody from the concept of aging itself. It was embarrassing. That's the reason. And aging is embarrassing. You wrinkle, some people get fat, Some people get too thin. Your walking is compromised. Your diet is compromised. And so you have to think about seminars to help people come on track. And she did it at Harvard on loneliness, on permanence, on female spirituality, on the late stages of life, and of all things on funeral services. I was very shocked when I read that. And so she helped the women go through this period where they were going to go out into the world and hire people to do everything they normally did, like watch their children, take care of their mothers, things like that. They would hire. So it spinned on them. It was spinning the world. It was not what they normally were used to having. And then she had an argument with B.F. Skinner. All psychologists know that B.F. Skinner invented behavioral psychology. And he argued with Betty about her zeal at this. He said, you can do things behaviorally to help yourself. For example, you can hang your umbrella on the doorknob and then you'll remember your umbrella. That's Skinnerian. That's the way you do it. You do something. You don't talk about it. So now we have a woman here with me who did something about her life. And you will like to hear her. Her name is Lyn Choy Uyeda, and she's called a personal historian. What she does is linking lives and legacies. Mrs. Uyeda, how are you?
Thank you, Dr. Baltimore, for having me. I'm fine.
And what do you think about what I said about why women outlive men?
I think women plan better.
Very good. Oh, I never would have thought of that. Very good. And you were a planner then for many years with the Legacies books and things. What are the Legacies books?
Well, I believe that everybody, even the most ordinary people, have the most extraordinary stories.
That's great.
From the time they are born till the time that they reach old age. Mm-hmm. They reminisce, they have memories, and we intend, I would like to see all of those memories captured for their future generations.
So I could tell my granddaughter, I went to USC, for example, and when I was at USC, who was running the ball? I can't remember, but he was very famous. But if I were smart, I'd put it down, or I'd ask my son, and he'll tell me. So that's an example. And when I was at USC, I had the honor of the federal government assigning me research on a company that was finding out how very young 4-year-olds learn from television. And guess what the name of that company was?
Rand?
No, Sesame Street.
Wow.
And so I did this research for that. I was a psychologist. I had to count a lot.
I'm impressed.
So you don't have to be impressed. It was work. But anyway, that's what I'm saying. If we tell, I wouldn't forget the name of the guy who ran the ball if I had it written down, right? I go get the book and here's his name, here's his picture, whatever.
That's right. That's why every story has to be documented.
Yeah.
Because when we are long gone,
right,
our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren may want to know about their ancestors. Now, this won't happen while they're young. My children were not interested in their roots until they were in their late 30s.
Oh, and then they came for questioning.
And then they start asking about their grandmother.
That's right.
Where they came from, especially in this day and age, Dr. Baltimore, there are so many multicultural and multiracial and biracial marriages and offspring.
Yeah, and mostly in America.
And they're bicultural, and they're they sometimes get confused.
Oh.
Or some don't care at all. But until they reach their adulthood, and sometimes in their 40s, then they start questioning, where did I come from?
Very good. Well, I'm Jewish, so I did work with the Holocaust Museum, and my niece was very instrumental in working in there, but I was doing Sesame Street. But at any rate, I know that that particular venue is absolutely mandated in our culture. We have to know that it's there. We have to bring guests from out of town into it because it happened.
And on that subject, I know many people that worked with the Shoah Foundation.
That's what I'm talking about.
And did many oral histories.
That's exactly what I meant.
For the Shoah Foundation, and it's heart-wrenching to hear that. And however, a lot of people don't know about the Japanese internment. They don't know about the Chinese exclusionary laws that prevented Chinese from coming to America. They don't know that the few men that did died as bachelors because they could not bring their wives to America.
I never heard
so
that. I heard
there
all the
was
rest.
a bachelor society for many years because the American government did not want the Chinese to procreate.
That is fascinating information. I never heard that before about a bachelor's society. Wow.
Well documented.
It is. And where do they house the documents? Where? In the library somewhere?
There is a place called Angel Island in San Francisco.
I see.
It is the Ellis Island of the West Coast. And many of these...
what's the name of it again, say?
Angel Island.
Angel Island.
In the San Francisco Bay Area. It's run by the National Park Service. It is a... they have the original barracks. They have poems in Chinese that were carved into the walls.
Really?
There is so much history.
That should be known, and I never heard of it before this moment.
I belong to the Chinese Historical Society in both San Francisco and Los Angeles.
So the library contains a lot of the individual family stories?
There are many libraries that do contain these family stories,
good,
yes.
Good. Similar to the Shoah containing what it does.
Angel Island's whole objective and their goal is to preserve these stories.
I understand that. That's very excellent. Well, I think you've done a contribution to your people. That's what I think. And I was wondering, when you were in public relations, for whom did you work? That kind of a background.
I have, my firm is a marketing and public relations firm based in Los Angeles and San Francisco. And I ran it for 18 years before I retired the first time.
Oh, you're still retired? Oh, you're still thinking about
that was my business, and that's how I supported myself for 18 to 20 years. And I had clients in corporate American corporations as well as government agencies.
I see. So when the government wanted to talk to you, we'll hear it when we come back on the air. We're going to go for a short break. We'll find out what you did for the government as well. Okay, in a few minutes.
Thank you.
You're tuned with Silver Moments, broadcasting from Leisure World, California, out of Seal Beach, California. We're coming back with Dr. Marcia Baltimore and her guests right after these messages, right here on CRN Digital Talk Radio.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to take this phone number down, and if you have anything to ask me or to ask my guest, this is the time, and we'll take the phone calls till the end of the program. 800-336-2225. Once again, 800-336-2225 is our station number, and you can call for questions from either of us. Now I wanted to say something else concerning some phantom sponsors we have who are helping us, and one of them is called Leader Furniture. The man who owns it is Lieber with a B, but the furniture is Leader, and it's in El Monte. Just go in there and say Marcia Baltimore sent me, and he'll be giving you a surprise. The other place is the Whittier car wash on Whittier Boulevard. Say the same thing, Dr. Marcia sent me in, and you'll get a surprise with your car wash. There's also a restaurant in the back of the Whittier car wash. A lot of people just get that car wash while they eat. You can do that. And our number again here is 800-336-2225. And I'm Marcia Baltimore. All right, now back to our guest. I wanted to talk to our guest, whose name is Lyn Choy Uyeda, correct? Did I say it correctly?
Uyeda.
Uyeda, okay.
As in you wait a minute.
Uyeda, okay, Uyeda. And what we're going to talk about here is her work during the 2000 census and the 2010 census. I never met a government census worker today. Could you, before today, could you tell me what is the goal of the worker in the census?
Well, there are several positions within the Census Bureau. When you say a worker, are we talking about the people that go door to door and door knock?
What must they do on a daily
Their goal, the goal of a census taker.
Yes, that's correct.
Is to make sure that everyone in the household, in that particular household, that was born in the household on April 1 of a given year is counted accurately and completely.
And what is it?
That is the goal. Completely means that even if it's a newborn baby, if the newborn baby was born on April 1 or after, that is a human being.
That's right.
A soul. In 10 years from now, when that baby is 10 years old, we are going to need schools to educate them. Mm-hmm. And it is a measuring stick for demographers and for corporations where they're going to locate their grocery stores, for government to find out where they're going to put their schools and their fire stations. Mm-hmm. And it's a measuring stick on how to plan for the future. As an example, did you know that in the most recent hurricane in New Jersey, that the amount of compensation that the residents were going to receive is based on the census count and the population count?
Yes, that's right.
And so everything having to do with the federal government is based on the accurate and hopefully complete population count of that area, that district, that city, that location, that region.
Very good. I'm thinking we're lucky we have you here to talk about that. Now, I wanted to get back to the women a minute, because the women didn't all have your savvy to go and work for the census, which I think was pretty savvy to do that, because you learn a lot. And it couldn't write one story at a time like you did, so the other people were doing the counting and the noting, right? And so we say to ourselves, what do they count? What do they know? Every person, baby to grandma, great-grandma, whatever. So I thought that was good to know. I was also going to ask you this question about one story at a time. When you're talking one story at a time, and somebody wants you to put this in an archive, do you have a rule for yourself on what kind of stories you're going to take, or is anybody fair game?
We, as personal historians, believe that every person is special. Even the most ordinary people have the most extraordinary stories. And
Dr. Baltimore, on that note, we're going to take a brief pause for a commercial break, and then we're going to come back with more of Silver Moments from Leisure World, California, Seal Beach, California.
Thank you. We'll find out what the leisure people do.
Marcia, we're back.
Yes, we're ready. All right, here we are. We've been talking about the most memorable event of the 1910 census, and we have some surprises for you in store. Could you answer that question for the audience? And they're the audience.
Well, if you're talking about the most recent census, which is the 2010 census, and they call it the decennial because it happens every 10 years. And the most memorable thing in the 2010 census, in my memory, because I did work the 2000, is that we made an all-out effort, a campaign, to reach the gay and lesbian, transsexual, bisexual populations. And the way we did that is to contact all the gay and lesbian organizations that we know of here in Southern California, Northern California, Hawaii. By the way, that was my territory. We have 9 regions, and the region that I was in charge of as a media director is California and Hawaii. And as you know, being on the West Coast, we have a very large gay, lesbian, bisexual, transsexual population. So we would approach their organizations, they're very well organized, to ask to come and make a presentation why it is so important that each and every body, regardless of their sexual orientation, be counted.
Good for you. And they counted them with the word lesbian or gay there in the document? Was it check off for that?
No, there is no checkbox for, to define or denote their sexual orientation. We do not ask that.
We do not ask that.
We do not ask. We ask that they too be counted because they are part of the general population.
But you don't know who you counted. You don't know which were which. You just count.
We just count.
Mm-hmm.
But we encourage them to be counted.
All right, so they get in line.
This is also very important for the national health organizations,
right,
because of their HIV and AIDS and prevention and getting tested. So this also helps the national health organizations
very good
plan ahead.
But you don't have to say anything. The person who's being counted doesn't have to check, doesn't have to say, just gets counted as a citizen of that home.
That is correct.
I got it. Okay. Now I want to talk about the difference between the living span of the men and the women in America. The men are dying younger, and that is a shame because we are all lonesome for them. So I had here some of the reasons how you measure sexuality. And it was Kinsey who did the research. You know who's Kinsey? Everybody knows Kinsey.
Yes.
Okay. And so what did Kinsey found out? He found out that sometimes the men would die because there are 5 reasons related to sexuality. One is the ability to reach the orgasm. That's the first problem some people have. The second is the frequencies of time, how many times they reach that. The third is the duration of it. And they measured all of this in the Kinsey report. This is not a census. Everybody doesn't have to do this. These were volunteers in Boston. And the frequency, the duration, and the secretion. I don't know how they got the guys to do that, but that's what it says here. And the speed in minutes of reaching the first erection. So they have ways of measuring what maybe make men die younger. I don't know. They didn't carry it that far. They got the information and then dropped the ball, in my opinion. It's not good research. You couldn't get their information and follow the life and see who lives and who doesn't. They didn't do that. They got to do it all over if they want it.
Well, in the words of Phyllis Diller, my husband's finest hour lasted a minute and a half.
she said, good for you. So anyway, that's the problem on identifying why we lose our men. I don't know if that's the problem. I really don't know what the problem is, and neither did Betty Friedan. She did not know what the problem was either. But those were the questions asked in the interviews. Now, Betty Friedan has another point of view. She said, aging is always expressed as a negative. Do you agree with that?
I do not agree with that. Aging is not expressed as a negative.
You know that, but she didn't know.
Unfortunately, today's society would like to brush the elders under the rug or ignore them and discount them. It is not, that's the American culture. Fortunately, I am from a culture that reveres age, reveres wisdom. We only learn at the feet of the master.
Good for you. That's lovely. Well, I think what Betty Friedan said in here is she doesn't think we should build any more leisure worlds, nursing homes, or retirement facilities. We should all live with our families. Like last night was Hanukkah. I went over to my son's and I brought the potato latkes. Well, I could have come without them, but they wouldn't like me so much. So that's part of group culture, family culture. I'm not going to go over there without anything.
Like I said, it's the American culture is that we discount our elders.
That's right.
And
that's right. American culture.
I'm very
now
fortunate.
She brings potato latkes.
I'm very fortunate, and you know.
Or you would bring egg roll or whatever.
In our culture, everything is food related.
Yeah, that's good.
In the American culture, they eat to live. In our culture, we live to eat.
That's good. That's good. So those were the questions that I had in my mind about Kinsey. What did he do with all that information? It dropped off the side of the bed, really, because we don't have any evidence what it was used for in the books, and I'm reading the books.
You're asking me what happened to all of Kinsey's research?
No, the people after the research.
The people after the research.
Yes, there's no follow-up, that's what I'm saying. I'd have to go enroll in Harvard to find it.
That's unfortunate. That's very unfortunate.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I have no answer for that.
No. But the point of it is, they did take it at the time, but then we don't know how they used it. Anyway, to get to another subject, why do we want to organize older people? Just to keep them in the lobby of an old age home? That's not the reason we organize people. They have to have a future use for themselves, for society.
I think older people as a group have so many life's experiences. They have so many stories to tell, wisdom to impart to our younger generations.
That's right.
The younger generations don't stand still enough to listen.
So we don't have to keep them out of the way anymore. That's what they're doing with those homes, you know. Keep the old people out of the way of the young people, and they hardly know them.
Well, it's, again, it's cultural, because in most Asian cultures that I know of, it is an honor to give back by taking care of one's elders and old
their
people.
own family, not just for a job.
That is correct. It's an honor to be able to give back for our parents that brought us up and nurtured us and made sure that we got educated. Now it's our turn.
Oh, very good. And you can learn from the older people. Like this example here. you don't want to just keep them segregated. You want to include them. Last week I went to a home for the elder, and they're all in wheelchair. 20 people in wheelchairs. All the help was in their 30s and 40s, young girls. They were waiting on the people in the wheelchairs, and then they started to sing. They had a singing entertainment, and it was wonderful because everybody sang for the older people, but the older people didn't sing. I didn't like that. I wasn't in any position to say anything, but I didn't like it. So I started.
Did the young people encourage the older people to join in?
No, I didn't see that. I did though. I sang. I'm a singer with, some other chorus, and I sang, and then some people around me sang. So you're right. They
should have been encouraged. I think that the younger people that are the caregivers of older people, they ought to be trained. Yeah. They ought to be informed. They, if they're there just to clean up after them, they're not really doing a service.
That's right. I agree with that.
I think that they need to encourage the elders to stay involved with life.
Really? How lovely. Well, you have to have a goal, and the goal should be to make everybody else around you as happy as you are, so you have to be happy yourself first, and then move it to the next people. So I think we don't need to build any more leisure worlds, nursing homes, or retirement facilities.
Well, as long as American culture is what it is today, yes, I do think that leisure worlds and assisted living places are very essential.
Okay.
I do think that they are very essential.
Uh-huh.
Many times...
do they have them in China? No. Just America.
Just America. But many times, people who have lost a spouse are entering a new chapter of their lives.
Oh, that's true.
And when they enter a new chapter of their lives, it doesn't mean that they're going to go off into the wilderness and be alone. No, this is the time to enter a new chapter, surround yourself with new friends, because let's face it, many times when one loses a spouse, unfortunately, we also lose friends that we knew together.
Yes, with the spouse,
as couples. Right. And it makes our friends sometimes uncomfortable, thinking, well, we'll invite her to lunch, and we'll invite him to dinner, but then that gets old because they're always that one person that's left ends up being a fifth wheel.
Uh-huh, that's cool.
So I think it's important for the surviving spouses to go and make new friends.
Uh-huh. That would be
have
good.
New activities.
And it would be a good idea to do the activity for some organization like the group. Even the smallest little mutual here, that we have. Whatever it is. If you go to the meeting and there's something there you can do, you can volunteer for that.
That's true, but not everybody happen to be joiners.
Yeah, right. That's true.
First of all, we look for like-minded people. And if that activity or whatever the organization is doing, if that agrees with us, then we will join in. If not, there are other activities.
Yeah, you have to find your own match.
You have to find your own niche.
Right. Okay, well, what keeps the same old person more helpless? Old people want to be helpless. Old people can't help themselves. Why do they turn into helplessness?
I think that the elders, they live life to the fullest until they are incapacitated either mentally or physically. I do feel that they remain as independent as their health and their mental capacity allows them to.
They need the encouragement of the caregiver and the family. Encouragement is a whole big different.
Oh, that's true. I do feel that an elder needs a very strong support system. More than any time in their lives, they need a support system. And the support system can come from friends, it could come from relatives, their own immediate family, or caregivers.
You have to figure it out. You can't just let it sit there. Is he coming up for us?
Anyone that doesn't take advantage of what Leisure World or other places have to offer, I think that they are doing themselves a disservice. I heard from another resident is that we're paying for this. We ought to take advantage of everything that the facility or the complex has to offer.
Yeah, that's true. That is good.
Okay, Marcia, it is that once again that time.
Thank you for helping us.
Now, back to Silver Moments with Dr. Marcia Baltimore.
Good morning, Mrs. Lynn. I wanted to ask you some questions. You've had such a wonderful life. Is there anything in the storytelling that stands out with you more than others that make the best story or the best life people use out of their opportunities?
Well, I interviewed one woman for her life story, and she was telling me about the horrific and the most traumatizing thing that happened to her when she was about 8, 9, or 10. I think it was 9 years old, when they had to escape from the communist takeover in China. And they had to escape. They had to hide in the woods. They were being chased by the Chinese communist soldiers. They would take all the young men to recruit them for their army. Very, very similar to the Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust, because they too were hunted down. I've heard things about the Nanjing massacre that happened in China. Eventually they did escape. Eventually they did make their way to a safe place. But she witnessed her grandparents being burned alive in their courtyard. She witnessed some horrible, horrible things. I do believe that as an adult, a lot of this has traumatized her. She cannot smell barbecue. She cannot cook certain foods because her grandmother used to cook certain foods. And after she witnessed this, and the communist soldiers came in and took over their family house, and just horrible things like that. She lived through it. She is alive, well, and came to the U.S., went to school, and married, and she now is in her 80s. But and her husband is American-born, and she adapted quite well.
Good for her, going through that kind of experience.
Yeah, it's quite traumatic.
Oh, I think so. Well, you did a good service to your people to put the records in order. Stories in order.
After the manuscript was done, I gave it to her, and she has 4 children, and her children never ever knew about her beginnings, and they were fascinated. And I know the children who are in their 50s now, and I said, well, why didn't you ever ask? And that question was just out there hanging. I said, why didn't you ever ask?
It's embarrassing to ask. Maybe she
No, I mean, the children nowadays, adult children, they are so wrapped up in their lives, raising their own families.
Oh, yeah.
They don't give another thought to what their grandparents or their parents went through to get them to where they are now. They are just so wrapped up in their own lives.
30 seconds.
Well, I think you did a good job to preserve people's memories, and that was very worthwhile doing. And I think that all of us should think about taking a notepad and putting something on it once in a while and sharing it with our mothers and grandmothers, if you still have a grandmother.
May I close with a poem?
Go ahead.
This poem is by Jack M. Williams, and it's a very short poem, but it says so much. Our elders are passing one by one, surely gone forever, until there are none. It's urgent for sure to record each thought of every family elder, so it's not for naught. So generations remember the beauteous past, will retain that knowledge, and ensure it will last.
Thank you. Thank you for that lovely poem. You wrote that, right?
This is by Jack M. Williams. I will not take credit.
Oh, okay, but it's very lovely. Thank you for sharing.